Hey folks, today I'm going to focus on 3 techniques to fill our mandala with color. And fill is the operative word. And I'm not talking about this fill, I don't care how good his music is. And I'm also not talking about this fill, I don't care how many championships he's won. I am talking about this fill, which is basic to Inkscape, and especially this fill, which is going to be the star of this video. Now you might ask me and say, hey Tom, isn't it possible to click on the shapes in the mandala and just turn on the fill color and be done with it? And what I'll say is, I've tried that, and this is what I got. Lots of empty space with no color. So granted, why does this happen? You can fill in some of the circles and other shapes, and that'll work, but it doesn't work for the whole thing. So then what I thought was, let me MacGyver my way out of this and create some more shapes, add fill color to those, drop them to the lower level, and then I'll have the whole thing done. Well, yes, that works, but there is definitely a better way. And that's what we'll explore in this video. And this is the result you can hope to achieve using this other technique. Now, as in my previous videos, I've included topics in the description below with timestamp links if you want to go directly to those topics. However, I think it's more instructive to watch the entire video. So let's get to it. Alright, so here's the mandala we drew in our last video. If you'd like to download a copy of this, I have instructions in the description below. I'll move it off to the side so we can focus on how to use the paint bucket tool to fill our mandala with color, and we'll talk about how to use it most effectively. To do this, I'll draw the outline of a couple of ellipses. For the vertical one, I'll make sure it has some pointed ends. Now to get ready to use the paint bucket tool, I'll draw a quick rectangle and make sure it's got a fill color of yellow and no stroke. The whole point of the paint bucket tool is that it will look for enclosed areas, and if you click that area with the tool selected, it will fill that area in with the color that you have selected. However, if we zoom in a little closer, we'll see that the shape does not fully fill in the space. There are a couple of things we can do to resolve that issue. So if we select the paint bucket tool again and we look at its options at the top, we're going to change the grow shrink by option to 2 pixels. Now this makes sense because our outlines are 4 pixels wide. So if we grow the shape to cover the outline a little bit, that will be fine because we'll lower that shape beneath the outline when we're done. So let's go ahead and give that a try and take another look. The bottom looks pretty good, but at the top point we still have a minor issue. Let's try again, but this time another solution is to zoom into the portion that we want to fill. Make sure the entire area we want to fill is on the screen, and we'll apply the paint bucket tool again. Now everything looks good at the bottom, and everything looks pretty good at the top. If there does still seem to be an issue at a pointed area like this, we can use the node tool with the shape selected, and we can move one of the nodes to overlap the outline in the way we need. Now once we drop that shape to the bottom, you see that it is fully covered by the outline. Let's go ahead and fill in the other shapes within this pattern. Once we've filled in with one color, we can easily change it to a different color. Now with our last area, there's another thing I need to point out to you. If you don't have the whole area within this screen, you may not fill it in entirely. So make sure the entire area is visible when you use the paint bucket tool. Okay, here's the whole diagram with the colors on the bottom layer and the outline on the top. This is the technique we'll use to fill our mandala with color. I've made a copy of our mandala on the page now, and I'm going to create my own personal color swatches and select the colors I'd like to use in the mandala. To do this, I'll import a JPG image I found on Vecteezy when I searched for vectors with a bright color background. So for each of my color swatches, I'll use the fill-in stroke eyedropper tool to pick a color out of this JPG image. I'll use orange, pink, yellow, and purple, When I start filling in the mandala, I'll just cycle through these colors in that order. Now I'll select the mandala and hit ungroup a couple of times until I see the first set of grouped items. My intention here is to just keep the outlines that I'd like to fill the shapes in and remove anything else that is extraneous. So you'll see me ungroup other things a couple of times and start removing items. I'll speed the video up so we can get this done more quickly. Great. What we're left with are the shapes we'd like to fill in. So what I'll do now is use Path Combine to make everything one object so it can be easily removed later. All right, let's use the Paint Bucket tool to get started. So as I mentioned earlier, I zoom in as much as I can to the area I would like to fill. I make sure the Grow Shrink By is set to 2. And as you can see, I don't have any issues filling these shapes in. And I also make sure the entire shape is visible before I click the Paint Bucket tool. Now that we're done with the first set of areas, I'll speed up the video and come back when we're done with the rest of the areas. Okay, now that looks pretty good. Let's say we're not quite sure about one of these colors and we want to change just that single color. Let me show you how easy this can be. I'll duplicate one of my color swatches and I'll use the eyedropper tool to pick a different color from my sample. Let's say this light blue. Now let's say I want to change everything that is purple. I can select that swatch, go down to Select Same, Fill Color, and now all the purple items are selected. And if I want to keep my swatch color, I can hold down the Shift key and deselect just that one. Now that everything is selected, I can use the eyedropper tool to change that to the light blue. So does it look any better? I don't think so. I can set it back the same way, or I can simply use Ctrl-Z to undo this last action. Now that I'm happy with the final result, I can select everything and group it all together. That way I can move it around as needed. Okay, I have two other techniques I would like to show you, and these other techniques require that we have a background shape that we can use. So let's take a copy of our mandala and ungroup it again. My goal here is to just keep the outer petals and just the outline of the outer petals and get rid of everything else. So I'll speed up the video for this because that's pretty basic at this point. Once I have the two outlines selected that I want to keep, I will duplicate them and drag them up above. Now I can get rid of the rest. Now I still just want one outline without any lines inside the outline. So I need to find a way to get rid of those pointed areas inside the two outlines. My solution for this is to duplicate the rounded petals. I'll turn them a red color because they're eventually going to go away. And I'm going to use the Bezier pen tool for this, and I'll draw a quick triangle with the Bezier pen to get rid of the fill color and make sure the stroke remains red. Again, with the Bezier tool selected and snapping turned on, what I can do is connect the endpoints of the rounded petals, and with the nodes tool, stretch it out beyond the area that I'd like to get rid of, and then we're going to use cut path to get rid of those pointed areas that are on the inside. I'll speed up the video to show you this. So now I've selected the outer rounded red parts and the inner parts that we just drew. I'll use Path Combine, and then with that selected, I'll select the black outline, and then I'll use Path Cut Path. Now you might be able to tell from the dotted line boxes that the inner pointed areas are broken apart. So with nothing selected, I'll hold down my Alt key, select all those pointed areas by dragging the mouse over them. And when I have them all selected, I'll just delete them. All right, this is exactly what we want to use to do the next two techniques. I'm using Path Combine to make it one object, and I'll center it back to the middle of the page. Let me draw a temporary rectangle again to prepare us for using the Paint Bucket tool. I'll turn snapping off, I don't need that anymore. And I'll just make sure the fill color is yellow and there is no stroke. Okay, so let's grab the Paint Bucket tool and fill in this outline. Let's check to see if there are any issues where the fill color does not fill in the entire space. And if we zoom in enough, we see there is an issue at the points. So we'll use the technique of using the node tool to just stretch out that shape a little bit around each of the points. If one of the existing nodes doesn't work, I'll just double-click, create a new node, and pull it out. All right, let me speed this up so we can get this done quickly. Okay, that looks good. Let me zoom in so I can select the outline, and we'll get rid of that. Now this background shape is what we can use for the next two techniques. I'll make a duplicate copy and save it above. So for this second technique, I'm going to use the Fill and Stroke menu to change this from a regular fill color of yellow to using what's known as the Radial gradient. So what happens is we're given a stop color of yellow and then an ending color of yellow again, but it has an alpha channel value of 0. So there's quite a bit of transparency at the outer end of this pattern. Let's change our ending color to something different. I'll type in the code for red. And what I can also do is change the alpha channel from 0 to something that's not quite that transparent. I'll choose 40%. What I would also like to do is to add a couple of more colors between the first stop color and the ending color. And what you can see is that it adds some colors that range in between the yellow and the red. The alpha color of these channels gets a little bit smaller each time. Now with this slider bar, you can adjust the area that each color covers by sliding each of its markers. Let's duplicate our mandala and put it over this in the center of the page. Now with the background color selected again, we can adjust our sliders if we want it to look a little bit cleaner. I'd like the yellow to fill up that first circle and then have the other colors merge themselves a little bit later. Now let's say we would like to change the outer color to something other than red. I'll make a duplicate of one of my color swatches, and I'll pick fuchsia here as that color. Then again, with the background shape selected with the colors, I will select the bottom color and use the eyedropper tool to change it to my new color swatch. And I can adjust the alpha channel to make it look better. Let's use 55%. So as you can see, using a gradient gives you a lot of flexibility in providing a nice background color for the mandala. Now I can select the whole thing, and if I want to move it off the page, I need to be cognizant of the fact that the background is no longer white, and because parts of the colors are transparent a little bit, what we should do is make a copy of our background shape, change it to white, and align it with the mandala, and then drop the white background all the way to the bottom layer. There we go. Group those all together, because if you move it off to the side, you don't want to leave that white background shape behind. Now for my third technique, I'm going to find a pre-built background. So I went back to Vecteezy and I searched on watercolor cloud background, and this is what I found. So let's put it into my project here. I'll resize it as needed. I'll take another duplicate of our background shape and put it over the background. I'll reduce the opacity of the background shape so I can see beneath it to move it around and capture the part of the watercolor background that I would like to keep. Once I have the area that I think will look good, I'll turn the opacity back to 100% on my background shape. I do this so that anytime I draw another shape in the future, it'll be back at 100% opacity. Now with the shape selected, I can go ahead and click the background color and use Object, Clip, Set Clip. And now I'm left with the background shape and the background that I would like. Let's center it onto the page. Let's duplicate our mandala and center that on the page. It is now the top layer, so the background shows through. Group it all together and we're done. All right, terrific. Here we have the top two mandalas and the bottom one that we just covered in the video. There's another background shape I pulled in from Vecteezy for a different watercolor background, so you can see you have all kinds of possibilities to put a background behind your mandala. Great, I hope you learned a few things here. Let's go to the outro. Wow, who knew that coloring could be such fun? I hope you're able to get the same results with your mandalas. Now for my next video, I plan on exploring how we can add some themes to our mandalas to put a new spin on our creativity. So stay tuned for that, and until I see you then, take care.